This happened in 60 days. He got to $1 million a month within 60 days. This was ridiculous. They had a $50,000 offer. We put about a little over $25K in ad spend, and we did $2.5 million within the first 30 days. A very key set of lessons and patterns that show up on a very consistent basis inside of businesses that produce more than $1 million a month. Friction slows everything down. All right, welcome to the video. My name is Jeremy Haynes. Over the years, we have helped 36 different businesses get to more than $1 million a month. 2 of those 36 have gotten to 5 million plus a month. Majority of them, to be fair, are about $1 million to $2 million bucks a month. However, in addition to those 36, we've had, I'm unsure of the exact number to be fair, and I don't want to make one up, but it's been at least over a dozen, but I'm not sure once again of the exact number in the education company, from people who have either signed up for my Inner Circle program or in addition to that, signed up for a consulting offer that we have that have also been over $1 million a month. And there are a very key set of lessons and patterns that show up on a very consistent basis inside of businesses that produce more than $1 million a month. There are 2 different sets of lessons here. The lessons of getting to $1 million a month and the lessons of expanding beyond $1 million a month once you're there. In this specific video, I'm gonna cover the lessons that I consider the top $1 million a month lessons of getting to that point. There is, when I say a key set of patterns, let me make sure you really understand it all starts off with one key thing, okay? And that key thing is very simple to understand. It is momentum. Momentum might sound simple. You probably hear this word all the time out of random people's mouths. Maybe you say it yourself, but you really got to understand what it is, okay? Back in the day, when Sir Isaac Newton found out about gravity, he discovered a principle known as universal laws, okay? Here on Earth, there are a binding set of principal truths that are just by inarguable means true, okay? Gravity being one of them, and momentum being one of them. Momentum is not just a word to articulate a direction of growth or a feeling. Momentum is a literal universal law of Earth, okay? And when you look at financial momentum specifically, it is just like being in flow state as a person. Everything goes right. Like momentum when it comes to $1 million a month, I'll just break this down for you so you can really understand it once again in the financial sense of what I'm saying. Everything is just going right. This is a feeling of collectively everybody within the organization. Like everybody's job's going smooth. There's no real significant problems that can't be solved rapidly. Like everything is just clicking on all gears, firing on all cylinders. And the main thing you have to understand about this is momentum gets created. Okay, and then you just get to play into it once it's there. The process of creating the momentum is what's important. Treat it like this. Like most businesses are attempting to figure things out. They're solving different small problems. They're just trying things. And usually in this specific cycle of time, this is when the businesses that are about to be at $1 million a month are usually at about the $100K to $300K a month mark. Like once you've achieved that specific level, you've gotten to the 1.2 mil a year to 3.6 mil a year range in terms of your gross yearly income. You've generally got something going for yourself that's good, and that potentially, when you really play into the creation of momentum, can scale up to $1 million a month if everything's right. If you have an offer that's scalable, if you have the right staff, and once again, you just have the right collective leader in that organization that can really push things and make sure everybody's on the same page, you get a breakout, okay? And breakouts are very important to understand. I have an entire video that I've talked about on this, just to be clear. But the breakout is like the initiation of momentum. Okay, this is when there's a collective decision by everybody, which is like, all right, it's time to push it. Okay, it's like this is when you make choices to risk things. This is when you go out of your way to go into, as an example, like let's say your usual ad spend to produce 300K a month is 75K a month. Like you might want to take a risk and double it, as an example, in this specific breakout window. You might have a set or a person, an individual or a group of A players that are on the fence about joining your organization, and you've been hesitant to do it because they cost a lot more money than your usual payroll positions, but you finally hire this individual or these individuals into the business, and boom, like shit just starts taking off. But once again, it's an uncomfortable decision. The breakout specifically, it's very important to understand what I'm trying to say here, okay? This specific window is just a period of time that kind of feels like scary, you know? It's like, man, are things gonna work? Are they not gonna work? Like, you don't really know, but you risk it, okay? And because you risked it, you actually start to get a little payoff. Or, unfortunately, you cycle back down and you end up in this specific range again, okay? Now, it is important to note, this is just a testing cycle. It's important to note what this really is. This specific testing cycle is like when you're supposedly trying to figure out what's going to be something that can scale up, or you're positioning the organization to be able to scale up. The wrong thing to do when you're in the 100K to 300K a month range, like the opposite of what's going to work, is to just kind of perpetuate what's going on, and try to maintain it. Like the main thing you want to do when you have 100 to 300K a month is you want to start testing things on a level that's like slightly uncomfortable, but not this level of uncomfortable yet, okay? This level of uncomfortable is the bigger risk. This is like when you figured something out in the testing cycle that you're now ready to go all in on, okay? So anyway, moral of the story, momentum, okay? Specifically, two sides of the coin here. When you're playing into the momentum that already exists, and most importantly, creating the momentum in the first place, okay? It's a collective decision once again in the organization to say, okay, let's take a risk here. Like, let's push this shit up, Like, let's try to get this thing going. And it goes fast. Okay, so as an example of this specific momentum lesson, we had a client, his name's Thatch, and Thatch is up in Washington and like Seattle, Bellevue region. Thatch was already doing quite well financially when he came to us, and we got together to do a deal. Thatch was right around that range. His information product business specifically was between 100 to 300K a month. He had a $3,500 product. He had just gotten a new sales team, and he had also just hired us, okay? So his specific initiation of momentum was two different groups of individuals, a new marketing agency and a new sales agency. And he did both at the exact same time. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, he, in that 100 to 300K a month range, recognized like, all right, I'm not getting any breakouts here. I don't have what I need in order to kick it up to that next level. And he knew he was doing quite well organically. However, he was not doing well on a paid advertising side. The people he had tested were just the wrong people, and he didn't have the right combination, once again, of the right marketers and then the right sales team, okay? So he took a risk at the same time and coincidentally just had both work out tremendously well. And right away, I'm talking immediately, there's a huge difference in results that happens. And that's specifically what I'm talking about for this phase. This phase here is what he started to experience. And how that looked on a financial basis was like there was $200, $300 plus $1,000 within a 2-week duration of time. And it was like, okay, hey, everything's working really well. Let's kick this shit up. And he said, hell yeah, let's keep it going. And that's exactly how momentum works. Like once you get past the phase where you're doing the testing and you start to experience that breakout window, you have to, like, this is the risk. Once you get to this point, you have to say, okay, I'm going to continue. It's a continuation, okay? And once again, the continuation is what eventually gets you to that point where you're at the $1 million a month. And the $1 million a month, it's important to note, in this particular case, for this example that I'm providing you, this happened in 60 days. He got to $1 million a month within 60 days, okay? Very uncommon, to be fair. I don't want to set the expectation to you that that's what's probable to occur for you specifically. I want to make it very well known. Like, this guy just had everything go right. That's what happens. And then most importantly, he had somebody like me who's been there, done that dozens of times over. I knew exactly what to do. That was me making the phone call saying, hey man, this shit's working exceptionally well. It's time to kick it up. I'm gonna double the spend. I need you to say, okay, just trust me, this is gonna work. We fucking blew that shit up. We didn't have to spend a lot either. Without exaggeration, I think we spent anywhere from like 100 to 150,000 on ad spend. Great rev share deal, great commissions for the sales team. Like, his operational costs were relatively fixed because it was an information product business. Dude, everything just was crushing it. Just full cycle, everything went well. But in addition to that, the organization made two decisions that were key once again. The risk window and then the continuation window, okay? The risk is the first thing. Well, technically, to be fair, the testing cycle and trying to stabilize everything when you're at 100 to 300K, trying to determine what is the risk that you can go all in on, okay? So I wanna make that a note that you remember, okay? What is the risk that we are going to go all in on? And that's what it's all about. You gotta find the risk that in that testing cycle, in that 100, 300K a month thing, you're like, dude, this could be it. This could be the thing. As an example of that, sometimes you're already doing really well organically, and you need an advertiser who can come into the business and replicate your organic sales process via paid advertising. And generally, that's going to be done in a content advertising strategy. Okay, you replicate your organic sales process via paid ads, dude. That could be the risk. Okay. It could be hiring that marketing agency. Sometimes everything's going really well with paid ads, but your sales team sucks ass, and you got to swap out your sales team. The risk is going to be letting go of your existing salespeople that are technically producing 100 to 300K a month and trying to bring in some new individuals. Or potentially upsetting your existing sales team by bringing in new individuals and prioritizing the new individuals over the existing sales team. You know, it's a risk, but regardless, that might be what you need to go all in on in order to start the risk cycle. So once again, testing, figure it out, find the risk, take the risk, continuation. Those are the three main things that you need to understand when it comes to the initiation of the $1 million months. Okay, and once again, it goes fast, and other times there's another way that this kind of goes. Okay, and this kind of rolls into point number 2. Point number 2 is you have to solve all problems that come up quickly. Okay, you fail to do this, you're gonna slow down the momentum. Treat problems like friction. Okay, this is how I want you to look at this so you really understand it. Friction slows everything down. Okay, and that's all problems are. Problems are friction. Okay, so when you're trying, think about this, right? We're trying to play into momentum and you're trying to create the continuation. What's going to slow it down? Problems, because problems are friction. Okay, so when you go through this cycle specifically, okay, let me show you again. And you're testing, you're trying to figure out what is the risk, and you take the risk, okay, and then you go through that first cycle. Now, during the risk, some things could go wrong. Okay, I'll give you a great example. I had a client. They were in a niche that had what was it, like $25,000 to upwards of $50,000 was the price, give or take, who was selling what in this space. And we had all kinds of clients in this particular niche. You know, long story short, the clients who would start off with us all had the same expectation because we had huge wins inside of this particular niche. Okay, we'd come into this niche and like we had clients, I'll never forget, like my first client ever inside of this space. This was ridiculous. They had a $50,000 offer. The $50,000 offer, we put about a little over $25K in ad spend, and we did $2.5 million within the first 30 days, okay? Because everything went right, the sales team was perfect, the offer was perfect, like it just needed some traffic behind it, and then, you know, who would have known? I mean, I sure wouldn't have guessed that. However, every single deal that we closed after that in that specific niche was just lay down deals. They were all deals that, you know, we're so pumped to have the opportunity to work with us given what just happened on that other deal. So we start the process of closing other clients inside of this space. And to be fair, I mean, we had a ton of wins inside of that niche. I don't want to make it sound like we didn't at all. But we had some losers too, naturally. And the losers all were the exact same in terms of what they failed to do along the way. They would take the risk, which in this case was us, okay? Hiring a marketing agency and bringing in somebody who's clearly doing exceptionally well on these other deals. Now, here's the thing though. It's like as a marketing agency, all I'm responsible for doing in this particular case is lead generation. My job is to bring in financially qualified individuals who are gonna spend $25,000 to $50,000, give or take what the offer is in these people's businesses. Now, that's very important to understand. The expectation of them hiring us is, well, I want to make a lot of money. And if they have the wrong expectation, which to be fair, we always set the right expectations. We let them know ahead of time. You have your end of the deal that you've got to fulfill in order to make that real. So you hiring us isn't just a magic bullet here where you're just going to randomly pop a couple million to your business. You have to do your half of the job too. So in this case, their job is the sales team. Our job is the lead generation. As long as we're bringing in financially qualified people, we're doing our job. Sure, are we going to help in any way, shape, or form that we can on the sales side of things, encouraging best practices? I have an entire sales training library, SOP series, all kinds of shit, best practices, all of it. I'll do sales training calls with the sales staff if I need to, because them closing deals affects my revenue and my rev shares. However, I digress. The point I'm attempting to make is I do my job, they got to do their job. Now, a big problem that'll sometimes come up in a lead generation deal, we'll crank, let's say dozens and dozens of people in the first couple days that are financially qualified onto the closer's schedules, and they'll potentially fail. Like they potentially just won't do well. Whereas once again, the half of the clients that are doing exceptionally well, that are just crushing it right away, well, if they have any kind of problem, dude, they're gonna rapidly solve that shit. They're not gonna allow the friction of problems to hold them back from the momentum that they want to experience in making a lot of money faster, okay, and in a stable way. Versus the people who lose and the people who are consistent losers, they have similar patterns every time. They go slow as fuck when it comes to problems. Problems are easy to identify, okay? And this is important to understand. It's easy to see what is holding you back, okay? It's harder, well, I wouldn't say harder. It takes more time and effort. It takes time and effort and resources to solve those problems. And that's what holds most people back, okay? So as an example, if somebody took a risk on us, let's use the example, they hired us for our normal fee of $15,000 and they took a risk on the rev share. And then on top of that, they got to spend money on ad spend. Well, that takes away from whatever amount of resources they might have had as an organization, okay? So to be clear, when a problem comes up, okay, they have to be able to allocate additional resources towards that specific problem. In some instances, like the example I was just providing, they might have to hire a sales trainer, they might have to hire a sales recruiter, they might have to hire both, they might have to hire a sales manager. They themselves might need to jump into the trenches and take several sales calls, as with the best closer of the organization since they're the owner. Learn and realize what's going to work and what's not going to work on these calls, turn around and then train the rest of the salespeople in the organization. The winning clients that we have, dude, these people are fucking money monsters. They are so aggressive when it comes to anything that holds the organization back. Every single $1 million plus month of client that we have, they are insane when it comes to the tolerance levels they have towards anything that can hold them back. Literally, as soon as a person, thing, anything, literally anything is identified as that's going to be a problem, that's going to hold us back, they attack it so aggressively. They do not hold back in any way, shape, or form on the time, effort, and resource categories to solve that said problem, because they realize whatever amount of money it's likely to cost or whatever amount of time and effort it's likely to be burned and need allocated towards solving that said problem, it's going to lose them far more time, effort, and money to not solve the problem. Because what ends up happening is you just stall or contract when you don't go through these things. So just to put it in perspective visually with the cycle I provided to you, so you put in the time, effort, and the resources to figure things out, to accumulate, that 100K to 300K a month mark, and you start the process on something that you consider a risk, okay? However, you don't get to go to the immediate continuation cycle. No, instead, you're denied the continuation cycle because during the risk part of this cycle, you failed to handle the problems, okay? When you fail to handle problems, you don't get to keep going up. Simple as that. What happens is, it's very simple. You will either stall at this level, or what's most probable to happen is you'll come right back down to where you were, or sometimes a little lower than where you were. And you repeat the testing cycle all over again until you're eventually ready to take another risk. And this is how most organizations look, because every time they take a risk, they fail to be just hyper aggressive. Like the most aggressive business person you could picture in your head right now in terms of how fast they're likely to attack something, how many people they're willing to dispatch onto solving something that's holding the organization back, how much money they're willing to throw at it. Like, you have got to be insane when it comes to problems that are going to hold you back when you're trying to hit $1 million a month. If you're just simply trying to maintain like the 100 to 300K a month range, then guess what? You can do that all day, where you just kind of casually, lackadaisically solve things. You got a lot of time when you're at the 100 to 300K because there's no outbreak occurring. Outbreaks that lead to momentum, when you go from that risk to continuation phase, you have to play into it aggressively because the momentum is what's available to you to lift you to the $1 million a month faster. Versus, once again, when you experience the friction and you don't handle it aggressively, well, it's simple, okay? The friction slows you down to a stop. And then you have to treat it like you're trying to lift. Like if I'm trying to lift something up and I don't have the energy anymore to continue lifting it, I stop and then it comes down. That's how the $1 million a month thing works. When you're at the 100K to 300K a month, it's just like holding your arms right here on the side. You could hold something here for a long time without exerting much effort, without exerting much of your energy. But when you attempt to lift something, you engage a whole series of muscles. A lot of energy gets burned just in lifting something up that's heavy. And then when you get to this point, you have to like imagine once again, somebody comes underneath your arms and just pushes you up that much more aggressively. That's what momentum is. The momentum comes in and just, it's like taking a fucking caffeine shot right in the ass as you're lifting something up. You have so much more energy and power and once again drive to be able to make it possible. Versus, man, you let the friction come in and you don't handle the friction, you stop and then everything comes back down. And long story short, it's as simple as that. You don't solve problems quickly enough, you're fucked. Like, you will not hit $1 million a month. You're gonna stall and you're gonna retract right back down to where you were. And guess what you're gonna do? This is what all the terrible clients that we've had over the years do. They take the risk, they fail to do their job, okay? Which is very important to understand. They fail to do what they need to do, and then there's just a lot of blame that happens here, okay? And they're like, oh dude, it's your fault, not our fault. Or the sales team is like, oh dude, the lead sucked. And the marketers are like, no dude, you guys suck. And everybody just starts pointing fingers at each other. And everybody simply put, you walk away with nothing. Everybody loses in that example. When you stall and then contract, okay? So anyway, moral of the story, you have to recognize that for the momentum to exist and to get into the continuation phase, okay? Whatever comes up must be addressed extremely quickly, okay? So whatever it takes is what you got to do. I just want to make that clear. There is no like specific, because there's a lot of different problems that can occur. There's no specific like static advice for this one other than just rapidly do whatever it takes and whatever needs done. You have to. Otherwise, once again, you get pulled back. And it's not some fairy tale where, okay, when you fail, right? okay, you start to take the risk, you get to the point where you go through the continuation phase and you take the risk and you experience this first cycle, okay? It's not like you just stay here, where if down here is 100K to the 300K a month level, you don't just get to the point where you're at 500K and like everything just stops while you get your shit together up here, you know? It's like, it's very hard to continue the momentum when something's already up here, okay? The momentum has to be a continuation from the beginning. There's very few times, there have been a few, I will say that, but there's very few times out of all the times that I've been a part of it where you get to that point, okay, where you're in the risk, there's some major problem or like a bunch of fucking small shit that comes up at the same time that just stalls you out, and then all of a sudden you're back on track and you continue. A perfect example of this, I literally have a consulting client right now, they just got upwards, okay, so they came to me, they were doing anywhere from 100 to 300K a month. I got them up to 500K a month, and the first problem they experienced was the sales team was overwhelmed. So as soon as the sales team gets overwhelmed, it was a new problem for the business, they hadn't experienced it yet, and they failed to solve the problem when they hit that level. So instead of just staying at this 500K a month level like some people hallucinate as possible, no, that's not how it works. Instead, they came right back down and they've been right around the 300K a month level ever since that problem. Now, a second time, okay, we got them back up to the point where they had another 500K month, and during that second 500K month, what happened this time? The ad account went down. So the ad account had a payment method verification issue that prevented for an entire 4-week duration of time ads being live in that account. They had to move to backup accounts. Simply put, those backup accounts had spend limitations. Thankfully, the business manager did not get shut down, and they were able to share assets to that secondary set of accounts that they were running out of. And you know, it was a risk mitigation strategy executed too late, simply put. However, when they experienced their second $500,000 month, once again, and all that occurred, same exact logic. It pulled them right back down to the $300,000 month level again. And to be clear, at this exact time, they're about 2 to 4 weeks away from experiencing the 500K a month for the third time. Everything is right this time around. There's risk mitigation strategies in place for the accounts and all the places for that matter that are generating the revenue. The sales team is officially prepared this time because they dealt with it last time. Now, I want to be clear in saying that entire cycle from the first time they hit technically from the beginning, when they were at 100 to 300K, got to 500K, went back down to 300K, got back up to 500K, are back down to 300K again, and are about to hit 500K again. In terms of timeline, that was over the course of an entire year. So it's important you understand, like, you don't experience expansion and contraction when you fail to get the $1 million a month rapidly. Like, it takes a good 2 months generally for the cool down to occur, and another 2 months for you to experience the upside again. It's by no means immediate. And that's very important to understand for why you want to be hyper focused on the momentum and solving problems extremely quickly. You do those two things and I mean it when I say that. You got to keep them top of mind. Like, everybody within the organization, from your marketer to your salespeople to your organizational staff to your customer support team to whoever is in the business, and especially you as the leader, you have to be able to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Momentum, solving problems. And once again, if they fail to do those two things, you just lower your probability dramatically that you're going to have $1 million months. That's all it really comes down to. Okay, to be clear, 3, this one's also very important, and it typically is undermined, I'd say, for how it mathematically can be quantified and anticipated. Okay, and that is problems. I shouldn't even say problems. It's broader than that. Everything speeds up, every single thing, and it also all amplifies. Okay, this is very important to understand. As you go from, let's use the example, 100 to 300K, and you get to 600K. Just mathematically, to help you understand, if you went from 100 to 600, just a 6x difference. A 6x difference. Okay, you go from 300K to 600K, it's a 2x difference. So just to put that in perspective, it's a pretty wide range. Okay, now apply the 2x or the 6x to how much faster everything goes and how amplified everything is. So 2 to 6x the amount of customer support tickets, 2 to 6x the amount of refunds, 2 to 6x the amount of chargebacks, 2 to 6x the amount of customers, 2 to 6x the amount of staff, 2 to 6x the amount of spend that's necessary to put out on a month over month basis, 2 to 6x the size of your Amex bills. Like, what are your credit limits? Have you considered that you need to lift those? Have you considered and projected any potential operational constraints that are going to occur? One of my easiest and favorite things to quantify, so to really just put this in perspective, is the process of hiring salespeople. If we have a call funnel or anything for that matter that's reliant on a human being, we have to factor in that there's a good 2 to 4 week training window and learning curve before that individual is fully equipped and ready to do whatever the hell the business needs them to do. So as an example, if as the marketer, I could scale, every several days. Let's use the example every third day. Well, I need to mathematically quantify the amount of calls that are available to book into, and I need to be able to project that, okay, 3 weeks from now, based on my current cycle time, there will be no more available calls. So right now, 3 weeks before I experience that problem, assuming I'm able to scale that every third day for 3 weeks and reach that problem, I need to get the sales team to hire a salesperson today. Because if they hire somebody today and they start the process of recruiting, interviewing, training, onboarding, all that, and then getting them on calls, that's a 3 to 4 week cycle, potentially longer depending on your organization. So the marketer needs to mathematically quantify problems like that. The salespeople need to relate their capacity and potential constraints, and they need to be able to see those same problems. Customer support needs to be able to anticipate, okay, if there's 2 to 6x the volume of customer support tickets that we experience now, are we capable of handling that? Are we incapable of handling that? When do we mathematically become incapable of handling that? So the simplest thing here, and this is what I say is critical to understand, you just have to do the math. This is a big thing that comes up inside of organizations as what ends up being a problem, right? Because you can anticipate problems like I was telling you by doing math, okay? And this is a huge problem in itself, which is why I label it as its own category. If everything speeds up and everything amplifies, literally based on the volume of additional revenue that you bring into the business, therefore, once again, the additional problems that come into the business, every organizational division can do the math and quantify and project like when they need to do what. Most people just won't do it. Most people won't do it. And it goes fast. Like that's what I've told you in a few of these examples I've provided so far. It goes fast, okay? I have a sales manager I work with. He consistently has fear as a leading bias in his decision making when it comes to hiring people. To be fair, what he's thinking with generally is the financial responsibility that he has when he hires great people and his reputation. As a sales manager who runs a sales agency, when I need him to hire people and I do the math and I tell him, look, this is with extreme certainty, like this is the problem we're running into and this is the amount of salespeople we need by these dates based on my current scaling. He'll say things to me like, well, I don't know, I'm scared because what if I hire them and then the volume's not there? Or what if we can't fill their calendars, So those are, to be fair to him, once again, very clearly real things. Those aren't fake by any means. He's not like making up the fear. However, you really can't let those kinds of decisions drive the business when you're attempting to scale aggressive, okay? When you let decisions and thinking like that run wild, that in itself acts as a form of friction. That's where I say the leader of the organization has to come in and have not micromanaging people's perspectives and thinking, but like has to be tapped into the psyche of the people running the business with them, okay? If they're seeing small, subtle things like that happening and it's not addressed at a leadership level, once again, it's just going to develop into a huge friction point that has to be addressed one way or the other. And it's one of two things happen, right? You either end up dealing with these things reactively or you deal with them proactively, okay? And that's the main thing I need you to understand is you either are proactive or react. And there's really no in between at all. Proactive comes from doing the math, proper leadership, really high standards, okay? And holding everybody in the organization to that standard, okay? To be clear, reactiveness comes from a failure to anticipate problems. Reactiveness comes from just doing it the same day when it comes up and telling people like, oh dude, I just now figured out I need to hire some salespeople, but we're already at capacity, so we're not gonna be able to scale for another 4 weeks. That is a perfect example of how reactivity can end up holding the business back for an entire month, okay? That's a long period of time when you're trying to grow month over month, year over year. So anticipating problems is very important. If I could rank these, honestly, this would probably be one of my number ones. I would pair it right there with momentum, to be fair, for how much emphasis I specifically want to put on this next point specifically, okay? High standards. There's never been, in my experience in any of these organizations or any of my clients or any of my students or mentees, never been an instance where they hit and exceed $1 million a month without exceptionally high standards, okay? Now, what do I mean by that? Let me break it down for you because, once again, huge emphasis on the importance of this one. So, first of all, it starts with A players, okay? A players are no joke. A players, there's a guy who I look up to. He's got 100+ million, maybe more now, respectfully, real estate portfolio, and his name's Anthony Lawley. Okay, Anthony Lawley also went from fat to absolutely jacked if you ever look him up online. And I had him speak at one of my events in 2018 called the Internet Earners Summit. Okay, and Anthony gets up on stage and he breaks down this really simple concept. Okay, he broke down people into 3 categories. Okay, and I don't want to sound derogatory when I say this. These are his words, not mine. But I love this specific lesson. He said that people break down into 3 categories when he looks at them as stats, okay? Stallions, camels, and donkeys. He said stallions are the equivalent of A player. And he meant like the literal animal. Stallions are these massive, muscular, powerful horses that are fast, aggressive, once again, very strong, and just drive forward. You have a very hard time like grabbing a stallion, by the reins, unless it's very calm, potentially sedated, and directing it on where it needs to go. All a stallion needs, according to Anthony, was a direction, okay? You give an A player a direction and just say, look, this is the goal, this is the prerogative, like here's the resources and what you need in order to get it done, like go do it. That's what a stallion wants. Like a stallion wants it no other way. A stallion also only wants to be around other stallions. If you take a stallion and like a literal horse, okay, and you put it around a bunch of like weak little tiny horses, like mini horses or donkeys, okay, you're gonna drive the stallion nuts. It also, if it adapts to that specific group of other horses and animals like donkeys, it is going to be terribly undermined in terms of its potential. Like if it adapts, it's gonna think to itself that its total potential might not be as powerful as what it otherwise could have actualized on. Keeping stallions around other stallions and staying the fuck out of their way once you give them a direction is very important to the maximization of A players and stallions, okay? Critically important to understand. You only want stallions in the business ideally, in addition to camel. Anthony then talked about this logic of camels. Camels are long range, highly reliable, low intensive on resources. Just you can lead them wherever you need them to lead them, but they don't really move without leadership and people moving them a particular direction. Like stallions and camels can get along, okay? Camels are necessary in the business as well. Like these are the people who need direction though. These are the people who, once again, they need somebody to grab them by the reins and say, okay, we're going this way, and they need to be consistently guided that entire time from point A to point B. They're not that resource intensive once again, so they're not gonna cost as much as what a stallion is. You go look up the price of a prime stallion in real life, okay? You tell me how much they cost. They're a fuckload of money. My point being, payroll for A players is also going to be a fuckload of money. It's going to be more uncomfortable for the organization and the business. But once again, stallions just naturally have high standards, and they have even higher standards when they're around a bunch of other A players and staff, okay? So the point being, stallions can tolerate camels though. Camels are reliable, camels are long-term. Typically, if you're gonna have like a department in your business, which sometimes is unnecessary, they should be led by stallions, and then they should have camels within them or other stallions. To be clear, and you don't need, once again, an entire stable of individuals in your company in these different divisions. Sometimes it could be like you have a marketer and like a set of salespeople and like a customer support person, and you guys are all like highly efficient, leveraging technology, all that fun stuff, and everybody can be a stallion. I've worked in organizations like that as well, and it's quite fun and impressive. And once again, the standards of the organization are pressed so high and kept so high naturally. It's just the culture of being a high performer. When you're around a bunch of other high performers, it brings the best out of you. Great example of this, I love watching basketball. When you watch a lot of these teams play during, like right now it's the summertime, they play during summer league, like the best players aren't even playing. It's a bunch of draftees and people just became a part of the team, or like people got traded onto the team, or just like the bench players, and then they go into preseason and like same thing, like they don't give a fuck at all during preseason. Like they barely try. Most of once again, the best players don't even like come out and play, and then they go into regular season, and same kind of thing. I mean, sure, like you get some good regular season games. Sometimes when it's a rivalry, there's a good game, but for the most part, I mean, if it's just a run-of-the-mill team and they're not really taking their record that seriously, and they're just trying to get by with enough wins and enough losses to get into the playoffs. But then you see the playoffs, okay? And the playoffs are when teams like actually start trying. That's like when all the top talent collectively all start collectively pushing and really maximizing what they're doing together, okay? And to be clear, then after obviously you get to the playoffs, you have the finals. After the finals, every 4 years we have the Olympics. The Olympic teams historically not been that prioritized by most of these players, but this year specifically, okay, it's 2024 when I filmed this particular video. Dude, the fucking USA basketball team is insane this year. Like all the best, they've just been getting shit talked by all the other people around the world, and they're like, are you guys kidding me? Like we are literally the greatest basketball players on earth. Like just because we haven't played in the last several years with our best players doesn't mean anything, but we'll fucking show you guys. So they all collectively, like literally all the best players, every single one you could think in your head right now, are all on the same exact team. And they're going to go out there and they're going to whip the ass of every single team on planet Earth that thinks that they're as good as the USA basketball team. Now, my point being, this plays into a secondary point when it comes to high standards, okay, which is incentives. These guys have an incentive, okay? Once again, it's playoff basketball. The incentive is I have the playoff trophy. I have the finals trophy that I can look forward to. I can become an MVP. What's the USA basketball team? Once again, it's just shit talking rights. and technically being a literal world champion. It's important to note, like, incentives control behavior just as much as anything else, and they also incentivize high standards, okay? Now, this ties in to what Anthony was talking about when he then articulates what a donkey, okay? So when he gets to the point where he talks about donkeys are the worst possible thing you can have within your organization. You do not want any donkeys. You want stallions, you want camels. Donkeys, and look, I haven't had a lot of experience with donkeys in real life. As soon as Anthony starts talking about this, I looked it up afterwards because I thought he was exaggerating with how he articulated a donkey to be in real life. He considered a donkey to be an animal that is very stubborn. It doesn't listen at all. You could grab a donkey by the reins. It's potentially gonna buck at you, or just stand there like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh and like not do anything. They're just stubborn animals, and they don't take direction well at all. They're very unproductive animals. Like, they don't really do a lot, and they're cheap. They don't cost a lot of money when it comes to the acquisition of a donkey. Generally, to get a donkey to do what you need it to do, you have to beat the donkey. So you have to like take something and you have to like whip the ass of the donkey to get it to do what you need it to do. And these would be considered like B, C, and D tier players that are in your organization. Okay, these are people that, sure, like, they're cheap labor and like technically they're doing something in the business that you're justifying keeping them on for. These are people, believe it or not, that are driving away the A players that are your stallions and your camels. Okay, these are the people in your business that aren't doing what you need them to do unless you are up their ass about doing it and potentially reprimanding them for not doing it. Okay, and these are not people that you want to have in your business. And once again, these are players that stallions and camels do not want to be around. So quite literally, you are going to drive down the standards of the organization. You're going to drive out your A players, and you are going to make your entire organization essentially collapse in on itself when it comes to the probability of hitting $1 million a month. If you just got a bunch of donkeys, there's no chance that you're getting to $1 million a month with a bunch of donkeys in your business. So anyway, when Anthony articulates all these lessons, I thought to myself, I'm like, man, this is so exceptionally true. And you see it all the time when it comes to people that you work with inside of companies. I have thankfully been a part of several key organizations in my life that have helped me tremendously understand this lesson in practice, where on my own behavior, I can see as an individual so much more of my potential come out just from being around a bunch of other people who all have really high standards for what they expect of themselves and what they expect of others. And I don't look down on that at all. I look forward to working in organizations like that. I look forward to being pushed and held accountable. I really cherish the opportunities that I have to work alongside of those other individuals. As a professional and looking over the course of my entire career as a marketer, those have been like the best times of my career, when I am very grateful for those opportunities and just once again look forward to working and talking to people and just getting the opportunity to be a part of those businesses. Now, my point remains the same. You can cultivate this and it substantially increases the probability of you getting to $1 million a month. And I know this technically in itself could be its own lesson of having A players, and it should be, to be fair. However, I think personally it falls under the have high standards as an organization because it all follows suit. Like, once you get to the point where you recognize what attracts an A player, okay, I tell people all the time when I'm pitching them inside of our sales process, I say, look, we cost $15,000 a month and we do a 10% net rev share. We do our rev share because when you want somebody who's gonna prioritize making you a ton of money, you want me. I am money driven. I care deeply about getting far richer than I am today. I wanna help you get as rich as I can possibly help you get so I can get a lot richer too. You know, that's an incentive versus if you just pay an agency a flat rate, or you pay whoever's working in your organization in different divisions just a flat rate, and there's no incentive for them to grow and to do the things that are necessary to get the organization to $1 million a month, you're not incentivizing anybody properly. Therefore, you're lowering your probability dramatically you're gonna hit $1 million a month. And it's very important to understand, incentives are different for everybody. Not everybody's a money-hungry gremlin that just wants all the cash they can possibly get. Sometimes people want status. You know, sometimes people want power. Sometimes people want work-life balance. You know, sometimes people really prioritize their families over everything else. Sometimes people just want to be cared for, you know? And it's important to understand, you know, and have conversations with people in the organization about what their incentives are and properly incentivizing them to do what they need to do relative to key KPIs in the business. When this is executed successfully, I mean, my God, you have the perfect alignment, the highest set of standards, people that are all locked in mentally on aggressively solving any problem that comes up and perpetuating momentum at all costs. They're all calculating and doing math excited to show up and work alongside of the fellow A players that they have within the organization. I mean, you just have every single one of these lessons just clicking, okay? You are, with once again, very great odds at a point where you are probable to get a lot of money and get to that $1 million a month level. I'm gonna close out with one key thing. This can be interpreted in many different ways. I'll break it down in a few. This is the perfect offer, okay? The perfect offer is scalable, has a lot of potential, very little friction points when you reach certain milestones with it. It's easy to deliver, okay? The speed to result is fast. This is also important to understand. And to be clear, ideally, there is a recurring component to it in terms of the money, where people are going to buy it again, or they're just going to pay for the same thing on an ongoing basis. The recurring revenue that comes from the perfect offer compounds month over month over month, and just same thing, substantially increases the probability of $1 million months, because you're not just constantly having to scale acquisitions and new customers. You're able to build on previous customers in every following month with the new customers you generate. Huge when it comes to just stacking the odds in your favor. You hit $1 million a month. The perfect offer, in addition to this, is something that doesn't, it's not trend, it doesn't die. It's very important to note. I've seen businesses over the years that do get to $1 million a month, but they did it with like a trend product or a trend service. And then as soon as the trend dies out, their business dies out. And that's whack. That's not the type of $1 million a month business I'm talking about. Sure, it's cool, and it felt good to get them to $1 million a month, but it's like, look, I want people to understand, these lessons are principally driven and created, and I'm trying to articulate them to you in a way where you understand this is stuff that perpetuates $1 million a month. It gets you there, and then it perpetuates. I don't want you just short term trying to tap $1 million a month and then you fall back down. So when you think of the offers that you're advertising or that you're going to put out there to the world, try to really make sure that you're focusing specifically on the ones that have legs for a long time, and then aren't just going to, once again, be something that comes in and out. Otherwise, you're going to experience seasonal fluctuations or just wild contractions in the business every time that you have to pivot to a completely different offer. So anyway, per usual, I have a tremendous amount more that I could break down and talk about in terms of how to help you get to your $1 million a month. I want you to understand this key set of lessons I've talked about here today are big time, high impact drivers of you stacking your odds of accomplishing that task. But however, you want more lessons like this, you want the juicy stuff, really want to make sure that you get into my Inner Circle program, or that you at least consider it. I do twice a month one-on-one mentoring with every mentee in there, weekly group calls, Saturdays at 11 a.m. We do 4 times a year masterminds here at the house. We do them at the top of every quarter, January, April, July, October. You come right here to the house in Miami. In addition to that, we have a group chat with all the ballers inside of Telegram. Long story short, it's the best group for people that are actively above $1 million a month. We have several people in there like that right now, or people that are trying to get to $1 million a month. I look forward to welcoming you in, helping you out, distilling a lot of additional value to help you get to that point financially that you're looking to get to. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, feel free to drop them below. Like the video, subscribe, go check out all my other videos, and I hope you guys like this lesson. Okay, talk soon. Bye.